Welcome, everyone, to the Lighter Mind podcast. In the Lighter Mind, we explore spirituality, personal growth, trauma, recovery, and the path to wholeness. The Lighter Mind podcast is not intended to diagnose or treat any forms of mental illness. We are not licensed therapists unless otherwise noted, and these are experiential conversations. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Lighter Mind podcast. My name is Kyle, and I am joined today by Mr. Allen and Mr. Crow. And today we were supposed to be doing something with McCrae, which we're postponing for the time being. But three of us are joining up and talking about Stoicism. So you guys are much more well-versed at what Stoicism actually is. My understanding of it is, or at least the way that I look at it, is the way that I look at the serenity prayer from the 12 steps. You know, focus on the things that I can control and do not focus on the things that you can't control, which is one of like the biggest, it's one of the biggest downfalls that people, I think people in general struggle with, but I think people in recovery struggle with that even more, because control for a lot of people means safety. And especially like when you're in active use, like one of the things that we're trying to do is trying to create like that safety. You know, we're trying to kind of keep our central nervous system regulated, and we're trying to make sure that we still have substances to be able to kind of like make us feel okay. And so there's a lot of control that goes into that, controlling like people, places, and things that, you know, inevitably we can't necessarily control, which leads to like a certain amount of suffering that, you know, people go through on a general basis. But there's a lot more to it than that. So I wanted to pick y'all's brains today on, you know, some of the history and like, you know, what, you know, Crow was just talking about some of like, you know, how CBT got started, you know, out of the Stoicism. And, you know, so tell me what you guys know. What is Stoicism?
Go ahead, Crow. I mean, we've both kind of started on this Stoic journey at the same time.
No, we did not. You were way ahead of me. I stumbled on it one day, and I don't know if you remember that, because I was early into my sobriety and I was in my apartment pacing, and I think I stumbled upon it because it was a moment of clarity that I had early on, of I landed somehow on the Serenity Prayer, and I was using the big book. Of course, at that time it's really my starting point, and I stumbled on this thought of just radical acceptance. More than just acceptance, it was radical ownership. And I started to realize it's all me. It's not other people. It's my universe in my own head. And if I have a problem with somebody else, well, they don't have a problem. They're just being them. The problem is on me. And so I started to accept and own everything as a starting point. And then I started to feel incredibly empowered by that. And I remember just having that aha, and my life just started changing. And I ran over to Alan's house and I said, dude, check this thinking out, man. This has really switched everything for me. I own everything. It's not anybody else's fault but my own. And Alan just kind of shook his head. He said, dude, that's Stoicism. And I said, that's what? And he said, that's Stoicism. And he goes to the other room and he grabs me this book, and it's Aurelius. And he says, this is what I've been trying to tell you. And so really, that was I had no idea what that philosophy was at that time. And I had no idea. And said, yeah, we studied this in college. Come on, man. So that is how I landed on it accidentally, kind of a backdoor approach to ownership through the Serenity Prayer, but then really, really digesting that. I didn't have language to put around the bones, I mean, I didn't have the meat to put around the bones of it. So that's where Alan really came in for me and introduced me to the philosophy. And so that's pretty much, I got to blame Alan for my
It's
Stoic
all
journey.
my fault.
Yeah,
I hear that a lot.
It is. This whole thing, it's Alan.
God damn it, Styles, you done it
Alan!
again.
Alan!
Yeah, well, I think for me, I discovered it. Like I think I've said in previous podcasts, my family or my parents always called me a Stoic because I just would have no emotion. But that really, isn't what it is. And I think kind of what led me in a weird way was reading Jocko's, one of his Extreme Ownership or one of those books, where you just, everything is you, it's on you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time I was doing that, I was starting to do, use apps for meditation and mindfulness. And I know they're not the same. And I just finished, thanks to McRae, Ellen Langer's, one of her books, Mindful Body or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
So I really got a different view of mindfulness, but, to me, one of the most important parts of Stoicism is being mindful, so that you can't control what happens to you, but you can control your reaction to it. And when we were working with those kids, I always said that to them. I said, hey, look, you got two things in the world that you can control: your actions, and you always try to do the best thing. You don't be a shithead, and your reaction to other actions, to outside forces. So no matter what happens to you, and I met with my buddy, the retired policeman, yesterday, and we had a long talk. A lot of it came up Stoicism, and I think part of the renaissance of Stoicism is the zeitgeist, this is where we are in the world, that this is a good, like, there are probably times I think it's a classic thing. It's kind of like Buddhism, same kind of ideas. But I think because of how material and fast paced the world is, that Stoicism resonates with a lot of people because it's not materialistic, and it's about being true to yourself and how you react to things, and it's those two. It's the bumper sticker that you have on your Jeep and I have on my car and Phoebe has on her car, amor fati, love your fate, right? So whatever happens to you, you've got to accept it, like, if it's out of your control, there's nothing you can do about it. All you can do is control how you react at it,
Yeah.
And in that time, and is really the key, and this is where the mindfulness component comes in, is between when something happens to you and you act on it, you've got that moment to assess it, and I think Viktor Frankl talks about that, when something happens, take that 10 seconds before you react, because I'm known, being half Greek, to be a little hot-headed. So, and I've got these things where, like, it snaps in a hurry. So I think you've got this mindfulness, and you got to realize that what happens to you, you have the power in your mind, not what happens to you. Your mind controls it. So you'll find, and Marcus Aurelius said this, you have the power of your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you'll find strength, right? So the outside events happen, you know. And this, I think, a part of the Stoic thing for me is when I see people just freaking out over what's going on in whatever politics and this and that, and I'm like, does it matter? Does any of this matter? You know, it doesn't matter. What matters is how you live your life. So to me, the concept, the whole Stoic thing was just to be a better person. And Aurelius says that. Let's not argue over what being a better man is. Just be one, right?
Just be one.
Right.
Yes. Yeah.
So that to me, I mean, it's pretty basic, but it's, you know, when I was talking to my buddy yesterday, I said, all these ideas, super easy in concept. In practice, it's hard. Like, he called me and he said, hey, and, you know, he wants to come down and have breakfast with you and me next. Cause he was like, it's like hanging out with a philosopher. I said, no, I'm not, dude. I'm just a freaking moron, you know? And he's like, I'll have two senseis. I'm like, yeah, don't know. We're not your gurus, man. But
no,
we've been down the path. And I think when you look at someone that's been down this path for a long time, they seem like, it seems like more than they are. Like, you know, we're just dumb fucks, you know, that have just kind of like stumbled upon some ideas. So, but I was like, you know, this is 2,000+ year old ideas, you know, Marcus Aurelius, you know, 1,500 years ago, whatever it was, Buddha, same concepts, right? 2,000+ years ago. But I think they're applicable throughout time, in that we can use these concepts and make our lives better. And I think that's really the core for me. And, you know, so
I like that too. And I like that you drew that connection between Buddhism and Stoicism. I think it's a winning combo for anybody in sobriety, of course. But not but. However, Stoicism is more of a usable philosophy that we can grab a little easier than the Far East. This is America, and we're not raised to go within and meditate, close our eyes and, you know, dig that deeply in. We just don't have nervous systems built for that. And Stoicism is a more tangible way that we can make salient through our lives, and it's more of an accessible, usable skill that makes more head sense than the accessibility of a nervous system right away, which for most of us is just fragmented, given the toys and the bells and whistles we have in our technological culture. It's more of a far-reaching grab. It's, as you said, it's easy to understand all of this. It's just not simple.
Right.
Because our culture at large makes it so distracting as far as what we're paying. That's an interesting thing. What are you paying out your attention bucks to? And if you think of it in terms of a bank account, man, we're all tapped out because we're paying out big money, attention bucks, into something that's not ours, never was. And I like that you said that, like momentary pause, because whenever we don't do that, and this is going back to my early realization of this, is every time I spaz out and I knee-jerk reaction in thought or in deed, I am giving away my power. And ultimately, what Stoicism and Alan helped me link together is that I'm giving away my power because my power was my choice. My choice. And it's going back to that hero's journey piece, is what are we reclaiming on the hero's journey? The journey of life is to reclaim your power. And I put that, what is my power? My superpower is the fact that I had the choice all along. Dorothy, Wizard of Oz, click your heels. She had it all along. I had that all along. It's just I've lived a series through my life of handing over in victimhood. You know, well, if you had my parents or my spouse, you'd drink too. If you had the job I do and saw the stress I'm up against, you'd drink too. Well, after a while, what you come to realize is through Stoicism, and that path for me was to realize every time I was handing that over, I was giving up my power, my choice.
Yeah.
Well, to reclaim that is to re-own and take responsibility for everything, man. It's you. It's your head. It's in your reaction. And I like that you said action too, because that's what it is.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because in the one sentence in that, Ellen Langer book's fantastic. One sentence really resonated with me, and she's talking about uncertainty, which life is uncertain, and that's what makes it good because it gives you choice. And she said that a lack of certainty, or having certainty in life, eliminates free will. So if everything is certain, you don't have a choice. This is what happens. So for me, the Stoicism plays in there, and that uncertainty gives you a choice, and that choice gives you to do the right thing and react in the right way, and not become beholden to the pressures of society. And I've been listening to a lot of Chase Hughes, which I think you've sent me before, and talking about how everything's a psyop and how to identify it. And like everything is, like social media, all this stuff is designed to brainwash us and get us away from our true nature. And our true nature is to appreciate the life you have, whatever it is, not worry about. And I'm kind of guilty about materialistic things because I like sports cars and bicycles and things like that.
You should.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, who doesn't?
But they don't define me, and without them, my life won't suck. It's something I enjoy. So I try not to be like, this is who I am. Like, we've had this conversation when people ask you, well, what do you do? Well, yeah, even when I worked, I was like, well, I hang out, ride bikes, garden, play with the dogs, Oh no, for a living. Well, that's nothing. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, and I think I was reading a thing the other day about basically how to have a happy life, and it was to find something that you derive joy from. I can't remember the exact word. Kind of like nothing matters as long as whatever you're doing brings you satisfaction and joy and presence, right? So I think I'm looking through, and we got to defer to Ryan Holiday because he's kind of the dude with Stoicism, and highly recommend reading all of his books. I recommended it to my buddy. The Obstacle is the Way. He just finished with Reclaim Your Rapture. I think it might have been a little too, for the first book, maybe a little too much on the journey,
Yeah.
So we're going to go through some of the principles that we talked about. The first one, reaction. You can't control things, only your mind, and this one thing I did read, it was about the Buddha, which is interesting that his enemy, sent these people they heard about his strength and sent people to throw flames and stones at him and couldn't hurt him because everything was in his mind, and it's metaphoric, but
it's so true.
But that's, the outside world is, and when they did get near him, they turned to flowers and just fell to the earth, the flames and rocks. So, so that, that was like sheltering your happiness from outside events, and I really do see it with people who are obsessed with the politics and, being indignant about what whoever is doing whoever's in power, that none of it matters. It doesn't matter, you know.
Right.
It's all it's like a reality show. Like I seriously feel like they're all just actors in a reality show.
Like a psyop.
Yeah, and we're just like, "Oh my god. Oh my god." And you know, your whole life is a shit show, whoever you are, but you're instead of saying, "I need to focus on me and control my reactions and my attitudes,"
Hmm.
my whole life is defined by someone else doing something 2,000, 10,000, however many miles away. That doesn't matter.
Right.
You know, like, doesn't matter who's
And
in DC or in Kiev or however the fuck you say it now, and Moscow
yeah.
and Beijing, doesn't
So I,
matter.
I want to bring up something while we're on that. Why do you think it is so difficult for people to separate between what's their problem, what's not their problem? Because that's a pretty like ubiquitous issue that we have now.
Well,
So like we're talking about how like the politics and the reality and the drama and all that stuff that like as a culture like we get absorbed in. But like why do we think that that's like the cultural norm to like get involved in the gossip and the drama and like all that kind of shit? Are we preconditioned? Are we
No,
like projecting? What are we doing?
I think part of it is this whole instant gratification society and influencer. Like, you know, I think people think, well, and the virtue signaling kind of thing. Like, I'm going to post this thing that I'm indignant about, whatever, on Facebook, and it's going to change the world. You know, and I think people honestly believe that what they think matters, and it doesn't. And three people saw it, and you're like, oh, you know, I posted about such and so that they're a terrible person because they don't believe what I believe. But I think, you know, so I think it's this giant system that keeps us apart from each other, tries to break us instead of being a society that's mindful and graceful and caring and loving towards each other. They want to split us so we hate each other so they can control. It's all about control, you know? I
mhm.
mean, you know,
So
like Henry Kissinger said, you know, the ultimate aphrodisiac is power, right?
Mm.
But he was just a horrible person. So, you know, in my opinion, but I would guess that he's down in hell getting a hot poker up his ass right now from all the shit he did in the world. So, you know, so I think it's just part of a bigger picture. Like,
Mhm.
you know, hate your neighbor, wave at him, but hate him because he's not like you. You know, hate this person because they're conservative. Hate this person because they're liberal, and you know, as long as they can keep us hating each other and keep you from becoming a better, you know, a more whole person, like external circumstances define, or my politics define who I am, which mine don't. I don't. You know, you guys know I don't give a fuck about any of that stuff. Just leave me alone. And, you know, but people don't, they think that their ideas are so good that they're going to force you to do it. And the problem is most of them have to use a gun to force you to follow their ideas because they aren't good ideas. They're bad ideas, but
Hmm.
they're their ideas and they own them in their mind, but they're not even their own ideas.
Right.
Right. Like, so I think,
Well,
you know, I think that this is again why Stoicism is so good for this era of hyper partisanship, in that once you realize you can't control anything except you,
mhm.
you just unplug. Like, I don't care. You know, I do
Yeah.
care. I don't want people to suffer, obviously. I don't want people to be killed in wars for whoever decides that we need to have wars and, you know, go shoot children or whatever the hell they're doing in other parts of the world or here, you know. But if everyone just tended to their own garden,
Mhm.
metaphorically, the world would be a way better place, right? Like,
So what I heard from you was fragmentation,
right.
right? The world wants you to fragment and be against this, against that, against these people, against that people. But if you really look at that as within, so without, So ultimately, one finger pointed out is three back. So what we become then is fragmented ourselves. So it's this mirror practice that we're involved in, this game that we've that we're learning is to fragment ourselves from this, that collective, whatever. But ultimately, what it's doing on a minuscule level, which is the most important, is it's teaching us to fragment within our own selves, which is the opposite of recovery. We're recovering ourselves back to wholeness. So on an outer scale, what you start to realize, the more you pan out, is the more you are similar and like the other. So what it's allowed me is the ability to pan out so far that to say I'm just one more grain of sand on this infinitesimal beach of all of us. And it almost trains one then to look for what is similar, not what's different. And Kyle, back to your original point, is why is it so difficult, especially in early recovery? Because of coming out of addiction, it is the extreme element of that fragmentation. Mm-hmm. It's the extreme example taken to that. And it's the personified example of that fragmentation process. So what I often look at as a usable way to approach Stoicism also in terms of that power and control that my brain and my nervous system need it so bad is, okay, I ask myself, what purpose was it serving me? There must be a need, otherwise I wouldn't do it. So what was it? What is it serving me? And what is that need that's underneath? And ultimately what I came down to is needing. It's not that I need to know or need to control. It's the need for control. So once I realized it's just like alcohol. I couldn't stand it, yet I needed it. So it's the removal of the need is what allowed me the ability saying, okay, well then what does it do for me? And then that's how I started to arrive at a replacement and get at what alcohol was giving me. In this case, drugs, alcohol, any addiction, shopping, corn, call it what you want. What is the underlying need? Because it gave me a feeling of some kind. And so that is what helped me arrive at, I didn't want alcohol, but I wanted what I needed, the way it made me feel. And so the control, answers, what is it doing for my why? And I had to ask a deeper question to kind of go beneath the surface of what was I getting? What was it doing for me that I couldn't get over here or over there? So it's not so much that I'm a bad person, I'm a wrong person for needing to be numbed out, wanting to escape. And that's what alcohol gave me. Okay, well, what are some other ways that I can get the same thing to, if that going back to why do we find it so hard to give up control, need to know answers. And in that point of needing to know the future, needing to know answers, why do I need to be any place than here right now? And because of what it gave me. And once I started to understand that, then I could go beneath just the immediacy of the moment and that immediacy of grabbing and reaching without knowing why I was doing it. So it facilitates, there's a purpose that it's giving us, I think we have a disturbed relationship with the need for that in particular. If that makes any sense, Kyle, too.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And
That makes
that's
sense.
sort of a roundabout way that I try explaining this to people, is that you don't need a yacht. You don't need all that stuff. Just exactly what you were saying, Alan. You have a sports car, beautiful. You love that. Those things, but you don't need them to fulfill you, just as you had alluded to. They don't complete you. So that is what Stoicism helped me arrive at, was to stand back from it. And it gave me that moment to pause and to really observe my thoughts more and drill down on them, sort of in a metacognitive way, looking at my thoughts rather than identifying through them. So I could look at them and study really what was happening. It allowed me that ability of metacognition and metacognitive thinking, to where I could look at it and become aware of what was the bigger picture, so I could pan out on Crow's brain, if you will, and look at it from a different angle. Because inherently, we're all beautiful people. We wouldn't be here if we weren't. Everybody in the world is. There's a goodness in them. But if you pan out, there's a reason for everything. And this instant gratification, oh yeah, all of those things that we were talking about, the instant gratification, the culture at large, everything, that was the same then. That's why Greek mythology, because they struggled with the same things all of us do today. We're the same.
Yeah,
They were that story too that you just talked about with the lightning and the flowers. That's beautiful, because that's still us today.
All right.
It's timeless, and it's a warning, but it's also a lesson how to reframe. And I love that, man. What is that story again?
So that's a Buddhist thing where the Buddha's enemy came to destroy him because Mara did not like
okay.
the Buddha's power of being able to not affected by things.
That was cool.
You know, and I think, I mean, what is that Shakespeare thing? The slings and arrows of outrageous misfortune. You know, I mean, things happen to you. And
yeah.
And I think people just think that no one else is going through things.
Through that.
Yeah, yes. you look at people and you're like, oh, they got it good, you know. And I've been told that, man, you born with a silver spoon in your mouth. I'm like, no, it wasn't, you know. But I visualize. Well, it's funny. I'm going to derail this totally right now. So I was watching some YouTube videos, and it was some Chase Hughes things and some other things, and then I watched this one, and it was talking about how some people, and I'm one of them, which I never knew, like people like close your eyes and visualize something like someone's face or trees or whatever. And I've never been able to do that. Like I'll do these visualization things, like you're supposed to visualize flying over this forest. And I'm like, I never see anything. It's just black. And it's a tiny percent of the population that cannot visualize things in their mind. And I'm like, I'm one of them. Like all these years, I'm like, everyone's got to be like me. I can't remember the name of it now. There is a actual term for it, but visualizing for me is impossible. Like I can't see it with my eyes closed.
Oh,
isn't that crazy?
Yeah, it is.
Just weird
That's
shit.
very cool.
So anyhow, sorry to derail the conversation,
Kyle,
but
no, you're good.
Kyle, I got a question for you. How do you best try to pull and tease apart that topic of allowing and letting go of the need for control with folks?
Yeah, dude, this is a tough one. This was a tough one for me. And I wanted to like back up a little bit, because I want everyone who's listening to understand like this is a very simple concept like we've been talking about. This is, I think, very challenging to put into practice because of, at least it was for me, because of a lot of the inner resistance that I kind of had to giving up that sense of safety, like being okay with like question marks, the giving up some of like that fear, like a lot of like my issue and a lot of my need to control, and I think a lot of people's need to control comes from that sense of fear, and
Mm-hmm.
that sense of lack and that sense of like we kind of need like that sense of predictability, and this one I came to a point, and I've come to it like a few times in like the process of like circumambulation of understanding like the ways that I make myself suffer, and just really understanding that like um for one, I think it was Seneca who said that like we suffer more in our imagination than we suffer in reality.
Mm-hmm.
And that is like just me to a core. And I think that that's like a lot of people kind of struggle with that issue, that like our need to control, our need to predict, our need to have some type of certainty. I think that we spend so much time and energy focused on creating things and letting our imagination run wild, letting our thoughts run wild, getting to the point where they become wildly distorted. And I came to a point like within myself where I started to recognize that like my thoughts cause me so much fucking suffering.
Mm-hmm.
Like they cause me so much pain, and the stories that I tell myself about what happens in life is always so much worse than what actually happens. And then, and so I spend a lot of time in my life looking backwards, and creating a narrative around like what I thought actually happened. And then I look into the future with that sense of like trying to control like what's possibly going to happen, and I create another narrative, that's based on more delusional thinking, more fear, more shame, like all these things. And I realized that like I've had a couple of moments, and this is something I've actually been dealing with in the last couple of weeks, where I realized that like life is really good. Like life is really simple, life is easy, and then as soon as my thinking starts to turn on, we have a problem.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been starting to practice more of just kind of being in the moment and leaning into like some of that mindfulness, just paying attention to how I'm showing up like in real time. I realized, dude, as soon as my thoughts turn on, like anxiety, like that's like the root of like one of my biggest problems, which is anxiety, is me. And the stories that I tell myself, and like the ways that I try to control people, places, and things that frankly I have no business trying to control, it just makes me suffer. And so I try to, like, I try to tell people, and this has been a huge theme for me in these last like couple of years of sobriety. Like I was saying, it's just focusing on the ways that I'm making myself suffer, the expectations, that need to control, the inability to accept things. And I've noticed in the last couple of years, like, and I've talked about this on the podcast before. The reason that I'm even in Savannah, the reason that I have the job that I have, the reason that like we're doing this podcast again, the reason that like I'm doing some of these cool things in my life right now is because I stopped trying to fucking control what life is trying to do. I just started to go like, my mantra for the last like 2 years has just been going with the flow. Just like wherever kind of life takes me, and like, wherever, in stopping that inner resistance that I have to like what life, what the universe, what God, like, whatever the hell you want to call it, wherever it wants to put me, like I'm going to show up there and then give it my best effort, whatever that is. And then, um, as soon as I do that, and as soon as I stop that control thing and I really lean into like that acceptance, there's such like a deep level of serenity that I've been getting as a result of doing that. But getting to that point, like I want to reiterate, like getting to that point is very, very difficult because like at the beginning of the podcast, we were talking about that ownership. And holy fuck, ownership is so difficult because there's such like a deep level of humility that goes into
Mm,
ownership, you know? And then when
yeah.
we really, if anyone who isn't familiar with humility starts dipping into humility the first time, it tends to hit their shame. You know, it tends to hit this sense of like unworthiness, you know, but like true humility is not putting yourself above or below people. It's just being able to acknowledge and accept that like this is where I'm at. You know, like this is where I'm at, and you know, it's not, I'm not better than, I'm not less than, like this is where I'm at right now. You know, and this is, you know, there are people who know more than me, there are people who know less than me. It's, you know, like this is it. You know, and but I think people struggle so much with shame that like leaning into that ownership and having to acknowledge that like they are the source of their own suffering is like a really hard pill to swallow, because a lot of people internalize that as like, oh, like I must not be good enough in some way, you know, because I'm the root of my own suffering, you know. And I think getting past that point of I don't know. I think, and I think it kind of comes back to the fact that we just think too fucking much. You know, as soon as you start thinking, you know, that like you give too much thought into that, you know, that belief that like, oh, I'm the root of my own suffering, is where some of that shame kind of comes up, and then we stop in our tracks, and then we go back to, you know, controlling, predicting, like, you know, struggling with acceptance. And like shit, this is such like a challenging thing for people to do. And I do think that when we can allow ourselves to let go of some of that like inner resistance, like just life gets easier. You know, like a lot of the problems that like you think are happening in your life are not actually happening. You know, the way that you know, when we think that someone snubs us, you know, when we think that you know, people are talking shit about us, when we think you just like fucking stop. You know, just like relax, you know. And I think that we have a difficult time in our society right now just relaxing and just being, you know, and just be, you know, we always have to be busying ourselves or distracting ourselves or using some type of substance, or and then as soon as we do all those kinds of things, we become more and more like disconnected with like what is actually going on, you know, between here.
Hmm.
And as soon as we lose connection with like what's going on between here, like fuck it, you know, we're in trouble,
Yeah, it's that
you know.
constant piece, like you're saying, it's that constant piece of trying to sort through the I.
Mm.
Who am I?
Yeah.
It's all about I'm this, I'm that. Who is the I? And it's a constant struggle between the outside world and the I, and finding my identity. It's all about me. When
Mm.
at the end of the day, and you start to really get underneath shame and these things, it's again Stoicism. Is it my shame, or was it my parents' shame, the way I was
Mm.
raised? Was it the culture's shame, not my shame? I took it on as the I. And if it is my shame, then it's because somewhere in my past I made mistakes. We have to make mistakes. We have to make mistakes. No movie is made in one full shot. Perfect,
Mm.
excellent, good. You're done for the day. No, it's a series of take one, take two. This takes a lot of shots, and that's the way our brain is designed to
Mm.
learn off of trial and error.
Mm-hmm.
But we, the I, again, identity, we think we're supposed to be some infallible, perfect, perfectionist things that also becomes a marker for my ego and the description of the I that I'm perfect. And so therefore I go through a world of a lifetime. Some people, cradle to grave, they'll go through with projecting all their shit out like it's not them, until that moment of clarity where it's, hey, I'm okay to own it. It's safe to own it because it's part of the process. It doesn't define me. It's just part of the human race. And once I realize that, it's a process of saying, okay, signal to my nervous system, it is safe, it is okay. And not only that, it's the right way to do it. That I can let go in that moment of clarity of allowing my brain to disidentify with my past and the mistakes I've made. I had to learn. I had to go through that. But I do not have to identify with it here now in order to build and visualize a future for myself around that. So it's each moment when you realize that, each moment becomes it becomes Easter. It's Resurrection Day. Every day becomes a new beginning. Every moment does, because I don't know what's going to happen in the next, but I'm squarely here so that I can get ready for tomorrow. Tomorrow's version of Crow is going to be a different one than today. So if I stay here now, I don't have problems. Moment to moment, our lives are a series. If you think this through, our lives are a series of challenges. Otherwise, you'd have been dead. You'd have been dead from your own problems, from the weight of our teenage years. Holy shit, that would do. Oh, what am I going to do? Well, it was a challenge day to day, and you got through them, obviously, or you wouldn't even be here. You'd have crumpled under the weight of your problems. But if I get into the future, now I got problems. If I start dwelling on my past, now I got problems. But moment to moment, we call those challenges. So,
what do you think about the word opportunity as opposed to challenge?
Oh, they're one and the same. So you begin to see that, and again, crisis as danger and opportunity, right? So there we see, it allows me the ability to start to reframe the word crisis or danger. It's like, yeah, okay, I better go with caution. But if I allow myself to do what you said, go with the flow, and take my hands off the bank of the river and just float down rather than trying to fight upstream, then, and I stay in a flow and just be true to me, do the best I can, then we'll figure it out. Then there's a learning opportunity. But if I'm going to fight it, now it's going to be nothing but a disaster. Right? It's like Mark Twain said, man, I've lived through the most horrible events in my life. Some of them actually happened.
Right, which is basically a reframing of the Seneca thing.
Yes.
So, I think, everyone said life is hard, and I don't think life is hard. I think we make it hard.
Oh, good point. Yep.
And I think I sent you guys that Seneca quote a few weeks ago, whatever it was. About being in the moment. But I think this goes back to the uncertainty thing. Like, I think a lot of our anxiety and fear is because of an uncertain future. And instead of saying whatever it brings, I will, the challenge or opportunity, whatever it is what it is. It doesn't matter what the word is. It's the event, no matter positive, negative. It's how you react to it. Yep. But you can't control if you can visualize a future, you can plan for a future, but you can't control the future. You can't control what's going to happen to you. Like right now, it's not going to happen, but an asteroid could come and smash into the Earth. or we could have a giant sunspot that wipes out the grid, and then in 3 weeks, 89% of the population of the world is dead. So if you sit and worry about it, you'll just become catatonic. You'll just be so panicked about what's happening that you can't control, that you're just going to sit in a chair and live in fear. All right.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, again, it's all in your perception of what the world is going to do to you,
Mm-hmm.
and and this is probably why, we get addicted, because that's something you can control, and it's a way to numb whatever,
Yeah.
either the past or the
Yeah.
future. And being in the moment is so hard for people. Like, they're just like, oh my God, this could happen. And maybe and it's probably by design, and it's probably, our brains are designed to look for threats evolutionarily.
Yes.
But I was reading about cortisol and bringing it down, and just telling yourself when you wake up, I'm safe, I've got food, brings it down, and you are safe. Generally you're safe. And, Steven Pinker talks about, even though it seems like things are crazy now, we're in some of the safest times of all history.
Right.
Your chance of being killed by the Mongol horde are pretty slim at this point, right? And, getting some horrible disease, so, but, we have to come up with these threats, that make us
which goes back to what you were saying about the psyop, and the world is a giant psyop. Well, you could even take that further and say, well, if it's like the world is a giant hologram, and it is what you make it, and what your reticular activating system is designed for. You look for you keep telling yourself this, you will find it.
Right. And that's, I was telling my buddy the other day about my love of gardening. And I said, it's so hard for me to be out there and just enjoy the beauty of the flowers. Like, they're just wild flowers, and we got beautiful things and plants and trees and birds. And then I just see weeds, and I just walk around looking for the weeds all the time. I'm like, every year I got the weed du jour, so who knows what'll come this year. But I'm like, man, just look how beautiful the flowers are. Be in this moment.
Right.
Don't worry about the
In
weeds.
the moment.
So we're always looking for weeds. We're always looking for those weeds.
We're always looking for weeds, Kyle. That's kind of...
And I think, right there's like the choice that we have. I try to tell people that life is just full of choices. You have a choice whether to look at the flowers or to look at the weeds.
Right.
And I think most people, they look at like what they lack.
Yeah.
And I think that, and they look at the negative, and they look at the, their anxiety. And, I think that most people, let's look at the fucking weeds.
We're just designed that way. And if you look at the culture around, it's designed for us massively to look at weeds and look at all the discontent and the division. And when at the end of the day, you step back and go, man, the person that doesn't share my belief system, the person that doesn't dress like me, the person that's way, way different, at the end of the day, they are me. And it draws you closer and closer to that, the more and more you release and let go. Unless they're trying to hurt, harm, kill me or my loved ones, or destroy the world. Yeah, man, they are me. And they still think they're right about what they're doing. And, this has been a great conversation, though. This is good stuff. And this teasing away is the part, Kyle, that really fascinates me, because how do you get that initial egg to crack? That initial shell to allow somebody with that tight grip just at least open in one or two fingers. And I think, Alan, you kind of pointed to it, and I always come back to this, man. We're coming at psychological, we have psychological answers for a physiological problem. And I think it needs to come bottom up. We need to re-engage with our bodies to re-inform our minds, and that's nervous system. So back to our Mass and Kips stuff, because it is all about, and many others, it's all about what the nervous system will bear. And you are not going to relinquish control issues until your body signals to your brain, we're safe, at a very subliminal, subconscious level internally. And that has to come from the bottom up, because otherwise my heart is still always going to be pounding hard, and I don't know why. My breath is going to be out of sync, and I'm going to have a freaking anxiety attack, and I don't know why. And I hear this a lot, and I think you do too, Kyle. We did with the kids when we were counseling them. Their blood would just be racing, but they would just be calm. Next thing you know, they're into an anxiety attack, and they don't know why or how it happens, because they don't understand physiology. They don't understand this thing that weighs 180 pounds beneath them. No idea. It's like machinery that we're walking around. We're not taught to understand how to work it. And this is why I was also going back to the top of the hour where I was saying that we're not so trained as they are in the Far East, because you had a series of yogas practices, breath work, mindfulness, meditation, Tai Chi, all these different things that would bring the body into that unity. We're not trained that way. We're fragmented more.
Right.
And so this is a part of this whole journey of letting go is body work, movement of any kind. I don't care what you do, walk, ride a bike, get out, move, spend time in good solitude, enjoying the flowers and gardening. You got to move. You've got to do this, so that bottom up, maybe I do something that requires my breath to breathe a little heavier. You don't have to go into something, maybe a little zone 2 cardio. You don't have to kill yourself, but I'm saying you got to movement. We need movement.
Yeah, I think there's more to it than that, because there's plenty of people who are super fit that are really fucked up. It just becomes their addiction.
They haven't done the whole unity piece to work both.
I think a lot of people just see the mind and body as two separate things, and they're not.
That's what I'm saying. That's my point.
But that's a hard one to wrap around. But to go back, I think the breath and meditation is good. And my buddy that came down the other day was like, I need to talk to you. I've been trying to meditate, but I can't. And I said, well, hundreds of years ago, you would go to wherever to learn how to meditate. Even in my youth,
as a child.
Yeah, even in my youth, I used to walk by a Ram Dass ashram, and I was like, I wonder what that is. It was intriguing. I had no idea what it was. Now I know, so I said, here's the upside to all the technology that really kind of can have the negative or positive. I'm like, apps, like mindfulness, meditation apps, breath work apps, all these things help you. Like, when I first did it, I was doing the Headspace app, and you have to do like 30 days of groundwork before you really can even get into it. So you can kind of understand the concepts, visualize, which I can't do. And I always wondered, they'd be like, visualize this little ball in the center of your chest and glowing through your body. And I would be like, well, I can kind of feel it more than I can see it. But I was telling my buddy, get these apps, because you're not going to just be like, I'm going to go sit. Yeah. So the technology is good in some ways, right?
Yeah.
And the downside is most of it is you suck compared to this person, because look at the life they lead in their little jets and with their gazillion dollars. But then you read of like billionaires that throw themselves off the top of buildings because their life is so empty and hollow. Right.
Right.
And so again, this goes back to the money thing. And I was just looking at this thing about Stoicism, and they were talking about how money and wealth didn't matter. to the Stoics. You could be rich, you could be poor. It doesn't matter.
Absolutely.
It's how you live your life
Mm-hmm.
and being a good person and doing the right thing, you know. So you read about these billionaires that kill themselves, like, well, I don't know why he killed himself. He had everything he could want, you know, but he didn't. He didn't have everything. Obviously,
Yeah.
there was something lacking in such a way that they threw themselves off a building, right?
Mm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
or whatever. And that's, I think, finding the peace inside of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, we talked about acceptance or surrender, you know, surrender to the moment, surrender to you can't control it, you know,
Mm-hmm.
um,
Mm-hmm.
and realizing that, you know, I think a lot of these people are still suffering. Like, life is hard. I'm a gazillionaire, but life is hard and I can't take it anymore. Whereas they can be like, huh, you know, I think of Nelson Mandela being in prison
Mm-hmm.
and being happy. And a friend of mine who was
So
a brewer, and he got thrown in jail because he drank too much a bunch of times. And then when he was in there, after he got out, he was like, no one could understand me because all I wanted to do was make jail fun. You know, like, we're here, it might as well make the most of it. I'm in, you know, and that's to
yeah.
me, that's kind of boils down the essence of life. Like, we're here, let's make the most of it. Let's not worry about tomorrow because there is no tomorrow. There's only now. There's no
Yeah.
yesterday.
Right.
Yesterday is just a memory. And if you take that memory to define your today or your tomorrow, you're doing yourself a huge disservice. There's no point in worrying, you
Absolutely.
know, or blaming. Like, even now, I'm like, stop blaming your parents for being shitheads. They did the best they can. And that doesn't define you. That's not who you are.
That's not who you
It's the
are.
only reason it's who you think you are is because it's who you are defining yourself as, not what happened to you. There have been plenty of people that had really shitty childhoods that turned out great, you
Mm-hmm.
know, that
Mm-hmm.
said, no, I'm going to rise above this, and this happened to me, but it's not me,
It's
right?
what happens. It's not what happens to us. It's what we do with it.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
And to
I
me, the
couldn't agree more.
Stoicism ties into that because
Mm-hmm.
it's the action and reaction thing. It's,
That's it.
you know, no, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that I was abused as a child. You
Mm-hmm.
know, I am going to break the chain if I had children. Not that I was abused, you know. But if hypothetically, I'm going to break the chain because I don't want that to carry on to the next generation. So I'm not going to,
Right.
you know.
So everybody gets hung up with that because it explains your behavior.
It's an excuse.
But it doesn't excuse it. But a lot of us want to live inside the excuse, wrapped up in an identity. It's like,
Mhm.
no. There's your suffering point. You're identifying with the action in the past. So to tease apart the identity of that is the tough one because it's the only one we've ever known. Going back to that death moment in the hero's journey, going back to the sacrifice, the that moment that you were talking about, Alan, the surrender moment. And Kyle, you're talking too, is surrender is the power of that surrender, the power of that death moment becomes so big because now I have to give up. Oh, the only version of me I've ever known. And it's like, oh my God, and there's a grieving process in there that a lot of people don't realize that they're going to hit and that they have to be ready for. It's horribly heartbreaking. And I remember going through mine when in early recovery, and I had no idea what was happening, but I felt like everybody I've ever loved in my life died in one moment, and my heart literally was just like pounding out of my chest with heartache, and I was just heart sick. I didn't realize, I didn't know what was happening, but until much later that was a death moment because the only me I'd ever known, good or bad, was dying, and I had to let that version go. Not forget the memories, just I had to quit identifying with him,
Right.
because he was the young Crow, and he did some great shit in his day. But I still had to let those titles and reputations, I had to let everything go, and it was just horribly grieving, man.
Well, I think that goes back to the uncertainty thing. Like, the past is certain, right? It
Yeah.
happened. Whatever it is, it happened. So it's a well-worn rut that you're
Yes.
in, and but
Yes.
it's certain, and like, well, this worked for me before, and I'm just going to do this because it's safe. I understand what those parameters are that were there. But as you age and as the world changes, those things stop working, right? Maybe they work for some people forever. Maybe that, you're born and you get shit figured out at like 6 and you just coast through everything and it all works out for you, but most likely not.
Yeah.
Right. So,
Yeah.
these things worked great for me and I'm going to just keep doing them. They got me through what I needed to get through.
Yeah, that's the rut.
Right. And then, metaphorically, we die every night when we go to sleep, and you can wake up and be whatever you want to be. Right.
Yep.
But your operating system, that mine is 61 years old, keeps saying, well, this is scary and this change is frightening. And what if people judge me and don't like me anymore? And I told my buddy the other day, I said, man, you go on this journey, you're going to be lonely,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Hopefully you find, like, in the hero's journey, a mentor or someone who's done it, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can, a touchstone that you're like, wow, I'm going through this. And like, yeah, you're going to be fine. And
Then that means you're on the right path.
right.
Keep going.
Right.
It
Yeah.
sucks. Yes. Good for
And,
you.
but you realize that certain things that were so important to you are no longer important.
Yes.
And you have to just, like, some people don't understand what you're doing or where you're going or why you're doing it. Everything seemed perfect. Like, you've got a really good life. Why do you want to change? What is your why? And
What
this
is your
goes
why?
back, this probably is even before Jocko for me, was Simon Sinek's, the book about what's your why or whatever. I don't know the name of the book. And he was the keynote speaker at a beer conference I went to in San Francisco. And this was a long time ago. And I'd usually skip keynote speakers because it's usually at these conferences, some beer guy talking about the statistics of the industry and how kids aren't drinking anymore and we're all going to, but this was like, this guy's interesting and he's a good speaker. And I left that and immediately, like, ordered the book. And then I recommended it, and the corporate overlords that I worked for bought the book for everyone because I'm like, this was amazing. I doubt it. I don't even know if half those people could read that I worked with. So, but so that was really like, what's my why, and why, and that really started the ball rolling. And I think a lot of people, and this will go kind of go into when we get around to doing the claim your power, is that's kind of discovering your why, right? Like, our purpose, like, what is your why? And that's, to me, was really important. And that just opened this whole new universe that brought in Stoicism and brought in ownership and brought in, actually caring about other people, and realizing that we're all kind of in this together. And the Stoics even said that, look, cooperation is important. And I think that goes back to the psyop thing, like, keep them from cooperating, because if they start cooperating, they're going to be able to pull the curtain back and see who's behind it and realize that we don't have power anymore over the narrative.
Yeah.
So finding your why is really important towards this. And I think a lot of people, just exist, like, I'm just here.
So,
and you don't have a why, you get depressed, you drink, you do drugs, you freaking do whatever to fill that why. Like, well, my why is just to get high. I get high in a party. I like to party, you
So,
know.
circling back almost, Kyle, to the original question is how do we loosen that up, that control thing of future tripping? How do we do that? Well, what if we wrapped it in new meaning, wrap new meaning around that with a powerful why? Now, all of a sudden, I can loosen because I'm seeing different things because my why is different moving forward. And now maybe, isn't it interesting? We can, as humans, can remember the past, but we can't remember the future. But maybe this is a way for us to start remembering who I am so that moving forward, it's wrapped in a new sense of why, a new purpose, a new meaning. And this is why I have to do this. I have to stay sober. I have to do this because of all of these different whys I've wrapped around that. Now it's almost telling the story a little bit backwards in hindsight, because I can see myself now as a great mother or a great father, playing with my kids, present and aware and patient on a playground. I can see myself walking into a board meeting and not being staggering because I'm drunk to the podium. I can see myself. And now I like what you just said.
Well,
I
then
like
part of
on
it
that why.
goes, right? Part of it goes to that whole beginner's mind thing, you know, with meditation. Like I try to approach everything every day with a beginner's mind. Like I know nothing, you know, like,
Right.
and you know, people, people be like, you know, I'm like, I don't know. I don't know is to me a very strong statement. You know, a lot of people think, oh, it sucks. They're like, well, what do you think about this? I don't know. You know, and it
Yeah.
goes to that. And I told my friend that
Socrates.
yeah, I told my friend that story, you know, and everyone's heard it, so I'm not going to recap it. But the one about the guy who's Chinese guy whose horse ran away and the villagers came, you know, that's a freaking great story. He had never heard it, you know, so I don't know. Is it? It might be good. It might be bad.
Maybe.
You know,
Yeah, I kept saying maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe.
And, yeah.
Maybe that's good. Maybe it's
Yeah.
bad. I don't know.
So the beginner's mind thing is good, like, especially with when you're, you know, meditating. Like you think you get, and you'll get in a rut with that. You get in a rut with everything. Like you do this long enough. And I still use, I do meditate on my own without an app, but a lot of times I still use an app, even though I don't need it. I know the breath work. I mean, the breath work one's a little different because I may want to do holotropic, or I may want to do, you know, some kind of out of the body experience where you're holding your breath so long that your brain starts, you know, shutting off or whatever the fuck is going on, you know. So I do enjoy that. But as far as the meditation apps, you know, I'm like, I don't really need this. I know how to shut off my brain. I know how to breathe into it. And I know how, you know, and I was telling my buddy the other day, I said, when I first started meditating, it was maybe 3 seconds before thoughts started. I go, and now I can probably go 30 minutes and sit there as long as I'm not super overwhelmed by external things like dogs barking or people a little kid knocking at the door, that I can just sit there and shut that brain off. Those, you see those little thoughts coming in, here comes that cloud, and you're like, no, get the fuck out of here, you know? And then, you know, and I was telling him, you need to label when you're doing, like, label thought, feeling, you know, and just kind of as you're meditating, he was like, all these thoughts come in. I go, then tell it, you're a thought, go away, you know? And we had that conversation years ago when you first started.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
So I think, you know, it's, again, it's multifaceted. I mean, Stoicism is probably, to me, the biggest answer to dealing with life. You know, I mean, they kind of figured it out.
Yeah, they did, and they had to back then.
Right.
Because the everybody in the world, in the known world, Hellenistic period, they were going through the exact same stuff we are.
Right.
Well, only probably worse, because they didn't know if they were going to go be killed, go into slavery. Everybody was a slave. Everybody went through some bout of slavery back then. Everybody. You know, they wouldn't just take your possessions, they would take you because you were the most valuable thing. So if you look at all the famous Stoic philosophers, Epictetus, Seneca, they all had Diogenes, they all had a bout of slavery where they were enslaved.
Right.
So they went through it. Diogenes was actually the slave of Alexander the Great's father. And he gave him such a hard time, and that who was it, Philip? Who was the of Macedonia? He finally let him go because he was having such a good time and gave his owner so much grief. But
But
the
a lot of the
same issues that they struggled with, life and death, and this feeling of needing to know, they struggled with it too.
Right.
And just like we do today, only it's being utilized to its max degree in our culture because they've found technology can do that, and media and et cetera, et cetera. So it's a matter of tuning out to tune inward is on this piece. But
Right.
yeah, Kyle, there you
Nice.
go.
Nice, gentlemen. Yeah, that was this is I love talking about this kind of stuff just because it's I think it's so easily accessible, you know, like you guys have said a couple of times. And yeah, I think for any of the listeners who are especially like if you're in recovery, like try practicing some of this stuff, you know? Like
And
really
you
start
use the apps. Use
Yeah, of
technology
course.
in the right way. It's a fantastic thing if you use it in the right way.
Yeah, don't just sit and doom scroll, you know, like
Yeah, don't doom
Yeah,
scroll.
you
Don't
know,
don't screen suck, but go ahead, Kyle.
yeah.
No, I think that's about it.
Yeah,
For
well,
me.
we could probably
I mean-
talk about this. I mean, we've just
Oh.
barely got the tip in at this point. So
Yeah, just a tip, right?
hopefully, you know, I mean, so seriously, the Daily Stoic website is great for people, and we're not getting paid, but we would like it. And you know, and seriously, there's a Ryan Holiday did this Stoic journal,
Ryan
the
Holiday.
365-day thing that I recommended to my buddy, where
Mm.
you do a reading in the book every day, and then there's a journal book where you do something based on that, and in the morning you read the Stoic quote and how it pertains to life, and then you journal in the morning, and then you ruminate all day on it, and at the end of the day you kind of write your thoughts at the end of the day. And seriously, it's great.
It's a great way.
Yeah, you know,
Start your day with a maxim. You got to,
right, but,
as the ancients said, arm yourself with maxims. So you're always coming back to, how did I start my day? I made my bed.
Yeah.
And
well, and I've been waking up every day.
Bible.
Every day I wake up now and I'm like, today is going to be a good day, and I'm not going to let things that I can't control bother me. And I'm not going to be reactive, and I'm going to approach everything with grace and compassion. So that
like
when,
that.
Yeah, you know, and I do, seriously, I lay there in bed, I do my little breath work, gratitude breath work or whatever. Sometimes I need an energy breath work, so I'll do, and I use an app for that because I don't know which ones work better, but I know my gratitude one makes me feel more grateful. And then I lay there, and sometimes I'll listen to some kind of philosophy, and then I'm like, all right, today is, you know, going to be a good day. I'm not going to let outside events fuck it up.
There you
You
go.
know, and again, you know, and I was telling my buddy, you got to approach everything with grace.
Everything.
You know, every situation you walk into, you just need to be like, I don't know what this person's going through, you know, and I'm going to try to give them enough space. And if they need to talk, if someone needs to talk, like I'm having a shit day, and anyone that thinks they're not going to have a shit day is deluded, right? Like you're going to have days that suck. And how you approach it is really key. Because if you're like, this sucks, you're just going to go deeper into the suck. You're going to
Right.
be like,
Right.
and you spiral into this misery, everything sucks, fuck you kind of mindset. Or you can say, hey, this sucks, but this is the reality at this moment, and I'm going to get through it. It's not going to kill me. And if it does, then I don't have to worry about it because I'm dead.
Right,
And the
'cause you're dead.
the
You won't care.
suffering is
Yeah.
over.
So
right?
as Aurelius says, be strict on yourself and lenient with others. I just live by that one.
Yeah, that's my.
I'm doing me and sticking by my habits, my rituals, routines, stay within my structure, and everybody else gets a pass because they're just doing them. I don't know. I can't answer for them.
I like that.
There you go.
That. All right, guys, what are you grateful for today?
Oh man, health, great health, great friends. You guys, awesome. Love this gathering each week that we can get together and do this, and like-minded individuals. Man, this is cool. Think tank. And I am grateful for the sun when I can see it, and we've had some pretty nice weather lately. So I'm hit or miss, but I love the sun. I'm out. That's my 3.
Wait, I only got 2 there. Oh, your health and then us. Okay.
Health.
Counting is not my strong suit today. So, well, I got up and watched the sun come up this morning. It was pretty awesome. Got up early, and not that I really care, but I was up, so I put on the USA Canada hockey game, and you poutine eaters, you lost. So, but I do love the sun. I know eventually it's going to kill us. At least that's my theory. And we'll go there some other time. But I do love watching it come up and getting that red light on my eyes and resetting the circadian clock. So I'm stealing that one too. And I am grateful for friends. I had a kind of tragic thing that happened with a friend of mine a couple weeks ago. And I'm just grateful that I knew him. He was a really good guy. One of the kindest people I've ever met. Just loving. First dude that ever told me he loved me in no homo kind of way, like just straight up as a friend. We fucked around and found out he did something stupid and died, and it's really sad when that happens, especially he was young, 41, so much potential.
Yeah.
And, but I'm grateful I knew him and could mentor him in his career as a brewer. He turned into a really good brewer and just a nice guy. So I'm grateful for friends,
Yes.
And I'm grateful that we're all alive and made it through to be here talking right now. And that hopefully McCrae is going to be joining us. Grateful he's here. And I'm grateful for all my friends. Even the ones that just complain all the time, but that's their burden to carry. And I'm just grateful to be alive, and more or less healthy,
Good.
Get up and say hello to the world every morning and wonder what challenges, opportunities, whatever is coming my way. Sometimes it's just a good nap, but
yeah, there you go.
Nice.
Yes.
So, and just
good
loving the small things in life, the little, my dogs, my wife, and you guys. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Nice. God, that the sun. I mean we've been getting some more beachy weather out here in Savannah, Georgia, and I've been loving it so much. Like that, I was on a break on work the other day, and I went to like the edge of the parking lot where there was a little strip of sunlight, and I just sat there for like half an hour just because it would just embrace that and felt what that was like on my skin. And oh God, love that. I'm very grateful for the weather and the vegetation. wife and I are going to go to the beach after this for a little bit. So incredibly grateful
Mm.
that I have the opportunity to, just go be in nature for a little bit, go get grounded. I am grateful. Oh, God, I had a really good week. A couple weeks ago was, challenging for me, and I had the opportunity to do some cool things at work this week, and did some cool therapy stuff this, earlier on. Well, I guess earlier on last week, and yeah, just very grateful for like a lot of the opportunities and stuff that I have presented to me right now. Um, I don't know if I told you guys this, but I did decide to start going back to college, and so
Mm.
I'm gonna go and get a license to be a licensed clinical social worker. So and then really start digging into running my own practice and learning some trauma therapy and all that kind of stuff. But I finally made the decision to do that, and so I got into a university this last week, and so I'm grateful, to be able to do that, and yeah, I'm grateful for you guys too. I mean, these
Right
are
on.
always, you guys always teach me so much when there's like a lot of these topics when because you guys are the ones who told me about the Stoicism, and so I'm very grateful that I have the opportunity just to sit back and shut the fuck up and listen to, and to, soak in like the true meaning of like what does it mean to like embody, like some of these topics. And so I'm very grateful that I have that opportunity, you know. Um Cool. Well, thank you, gentlemen. All the listeners, check us out on Instagram at thelighter.mind. Check us out on YouTube if you haven't already. It's just at the lighter mind. Look for the balloon with the brain in it. Make sure you're liking, subscribing, doing all that kind of stuff. It really helps us out. Share the podcast with people. Try to bring them in on this conversation that we're having, and over the hopefully next couple of weeks, we're gonna have my crayon here. We're gonna be doing some cool stuff, doing a little book study stuff. So that'll be good. But thank you everyone for tuning in, and check us out on the next episode.